The Seven Thunders, Part 12, the end of the 6,000 years, is the count from creation or from sin. Sennacherib's two invasions of Jerusalem. There is only one event in Scripture where the sabbatical and jubilee year language of Leviticus 25 is used. Any attempt to calculate the end of the 6,000 years of Earth's history must therefore be tied to this biblical event, namely, the jubilee that commenced at the end of the sabbatical year, during which King Sennacherib of Assyria attempted his second invasion against Judah. There is much disagreement among Bible scholars regarding Sennacherib's invasion, with most of the commentaries stating that there was only one invasion which has been documented in history by cuneiform tablets as having taken place in 701 BC. In my opinion, it was impossible to solve Sennacherib's puzzle until after the year 2022 and the Lord's revelation of the seventh thunder, as we will see. The two invasions of Sennacherib are described in almost identical language 3 times in Scripture. 7 Kings 18:13 to 2 Kings 19, Isaiah 36 and 37, and 2 Chronicles 32, 1 to 22. And this would take some time for you to do it, but you're welcome to do it. Then Isaiah sent to Hezekiah, saying, That which thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib, king of Assyria, I have heard. And this shall be a sign unto thee. Ye shall eat this year, a sabbatical year, such things as grow of themselves. They were not to plant, so that was a sabbatical year. And in the second year, that which springeth of the same. That's a jubilee year. They didn't plant either. And in the third year, sow ye and reap, and plant vineyards and eat the fruits thereof. And it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 184,500. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. 2 Kings 19:20 to 35. So, that second invasion of Sennacherib had to take place at the end of a sabbatical year as a jubilee year was starting. Objective of this study: prove that jubilee number 67 commenced at the end of the sabbatical year in 695 BC, which was also the year during which King Sennacherib of Assyria attempted his second invasion against Judah, only to have his army of 185,000 Assyrians completely decimated by a single angel of the Lord. And you have all of the text there. Then prove that Jubilee number 122 commenced at the end of the sabbatical year in AD 2001. Then we know that we only have 21 years till the commencement of year 6000, the Jubilee of Jubilees. I know this is hard if you're not mathematically inclined. I understand that. But if you have issues with this study, then you're going to have to do this exercise. And I'm going very slow so you can do it. Now look at this line. And this is the one that I have told you that has been checked by mathematicians. Notice that Adam lived 930 years. And this is just a tedious exercise, but it's simple. All you got to do is follow the Bible. So Adam lived 930 years and he died. That's Genesis 5:5. But when Adam was 130 years old, Seth was born. So now the world is 130 years old when Seth is born. And the blue timeline is the one that concerns us. Now look at the line for Enos, which has Genesis 5:11 next to it. In Genesis 5:6 we are told, and Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. So when you add 105, which is the age of Seth, when he had Enos, by the time Seth had Enos, the world was 235 years old. And I typed 225, but it was a typographical error, because now look at Canaan. Genesis 5:9 says, and Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaan. So when you add 235 and 90, you have 325, which is the age of the world when Canaan was born. So you also see there arrows for Shem. For example, you have an arrow. There's a slide that explains Shem in my original presentation. You have a slide for Abraham, and you have 3 or 4 more slides. Look at the flood at the right. It took place in the year 1656. Notice how Shem is the one that carries the line, and he died in 2158 when Abraham was 150 years old. So Shem knew Abraham. Abraham died in the year 2183. This took a lot of time, but this is the only way you can do it. But it's from creation. It is not from sin. We don't know when Adam sinned, so we can't figure it out. Now look at the second part of the chart. This starts with Abraham when the world was 2008 years old, and it goes all the way to Sennacherib's invasion number 2. And there you have a number of slides, a number of arrows that explain complicated calculations in order to arrive at the age, at the correct age for Solomon, for Jehoram, for Hezekiah, etc. Look on the right-hand side, Sennacherib's invasion number 2, Jubilee 67, year 3283, 695 BC. Let's not spend time on that. I'm going to take you a couple more slides and then we'll come back to this one chart. King Hezekiah's history. The commencement of the reign of King Ahaz, the father of Hezekiah, took place in the year 3263, and he reigned 16 years, 2 Kings 16:2. That would place the commencement of Hezekiah's reign in the year 3279. The Taylor Prism is a large 6-sided clay document which contains the annals of Sennacherib. The prism was discovered in the ruins of Nineveh. The artifact was acquired by the British consul in Baghdad, Colonel R. Taylor, in 1830, and subsequently donated to the British Museum. As one of the earliest, lengthiest cuneiform texts to be discovered, it played a significant role in deciphering and understanding Akkadian cuneiform. The document is most celebrated outside of Assyriology for its account of the siege of Jerusalem in 701 BC, an event described in the Bible in 2 Kings 18-19 and Isaiah 36-37. Eva Miller, University of Oxford Bibliography, and you've got there all of the references for that quote, where it comes from. Sennacherib invaded Judah in the 14th year of Hezekiah. The cuneiform inscriptions leave no doubt that this invasion took place in 701 BC. Very clear, we're going to see it. Which would fix 715 as Hezekiah's initial year. If Sennacherib invaded in the 14th year of Hezekiah, and the invasion took place in 701 BC, then Hezekiah would have started reigning in 715 BC. The Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 6, page 381. After the discovery of the Taylor Prism in 1830, most scholars agree that the commencement of Hezekiah's reign began in 715 BC, which equals the year 3263, counting forward from Adam. A 16-year backward adjustment, 3,279 minus 3,263, has been made to the timeline to account for the inclusive reckoning of years over the 3,263 year span from Adam to King Hezekiah. Very confusing, I know, I'm going slow. You're going to be very rewarded when we finish with this study, I promise you. But let's find out what is the inclusive reckoning of years and why that 16-year adjustment had to be made. In other words, if I did all my calculations correctly, year 715 BC, when Hezekiah started to reign, would equal, based on my calculations, the year 3279 from creation. But if you put this on a chart and you count from year 1 when Adam was born, 715 BC is only year 3263. So there is a 16-year adjustment that I have made, because we know that 715 BC is written on stone, which is a cuneiform tablet, which is year 3263. So obviously when I made my calculations, I counted too many years. You're going to see why, because the inclusive reckoning of years used in the Bible. Here you see the Taylor prism. Look at the website on the left. The Taylor prism, the Sennacherib prism, includes a description of the tribute received from Hezekiah, king of Judah, in 701 BC. So this is why all of the historians agree that that first invasion took place in 701 BC. Many historians say there was no second invasion. It's only one invasion. Mrs. White says there are two invasions. We're going to see it. This is the words that Hezekiah wrote on the prism. And I am only going to read the yellow. As for Hezekiah the Judahite, who did not submit to my yoke, 46 of his strong walled cities I besieged and took them. 200,150 people, great and small, male and female, horses, mules, asses, camels, cattle, and sheep without number, I brought away. Hezekiah himself, like a caged bird, I shut up in Jerusalem. In addition to the 30 talents of gold, so he's saying he received from Hezekiah 30 talents of gold. Look at my note at the bottom. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria to Lachish, saying, I have offended, return from me. That which thou puttest on me will I bear. And the king of Assyria appointed unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. 2 Kings 18:14. Inclusive reckoning of years. The question of how long Jesus was in the tomb rose from a modern misunderstanding of inclusive reckoning, the common ancient method of counting. It included both the day or year on which any period of time began and also that on which it ended. So it's different from us. If I tell you today's year number 2026, 3 years from now would be 27, 28, 29. In those days, if 2026, 3 years would be 26, 27, and 28, 1 year short. Okay? That's basically what it's saying. It included both the day or year on which any period of time began and also that on which it ended, no matter how small a fraction of the beginning or ending day or year was involved. Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 5, page 249. This is why there's so many people that think Jesus was crucified on Wednesday, because the Bible says that he rose on the third day. If he died on Wednesday, Thursday would be 24 hours, Friday would be 48 hours, Saturday would be 72 hours, and he rose on Sunday. He was 3 days, 24-hour days in the tomb. The biblical reckoning is he died on Friday. Friday is 1 day, partial day. Saturday is 1 full day. Sunday is partial day. He resurrected 3 days later. And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. And at the end of 3 years they took it. Even in the 6th year of Hezekiah, that is the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was taken. Look at the red call out. Shalmaneser came up against Samaria in the 4th year of Hezekiah, and at the end of 3 years he took it. Today we would add 3 years to the 4th year of Hezekiah and say that Shalmaneser took Samaria on the 7th year of Hezekiah. But 2 King 18:10 calls it the 6th year due to the inclusive reckoning of years. For this reason, the 16-year adjustment was made backwards 16 years to line up with the year 3263, which is 715 BC, the start of Hezekiah's reign. The Bible lists several periods of 3 days that ended during, not after, the 3rd day, and thus covered less than 3 full 24-hour days. And then he gives you some references there. Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 5, page 250. Now we see this chart again. Look at the 4th line from the bottom at King Ahaz, the father of Hezekiah. His reign commenced in the year 3263, and he reigned 16 years, 2 Kings 16:2. That would place the commencement of Hezekiah's reign in the year 3279. But the Taylor Prism confirms that Hezekiah began to reign in 715 BC, which equals year 3263, counting forward from Adam. This is why I made the 16-year adjustment to the timeline. Sennacherib invasion number 1. Now in the 14th year of King Hezekiah did Sennacherib king of Assyria come up against all the fenced cities of Judah and took them. And the king of Assyria appointed unto Hezekiah king of Judah 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house. At that time did Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and gave it to the king of Assyria. 2 Kings 18:13-16. So, in the first invasion, King Hezekiah takes the gold from the temple of the Lord, from the handles, cuts it off and gives it to the king of Assyria, and the king of Assyria leaves. But you can hardly find that if you read the Bible, unless you read it very carefully. We're going to see that. In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death, and the prophet Isaiah said unto him, Thou shalt die and not live. Then he prayed unto the Lord, and it came to pass, afore Isaiah was gone out, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Turn again, and tell Hezekiah, I have heard thy prayer, I will heal thee, and I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city. 2 Kings 20:1-6. The Lord's promise of delivering and defending the city could not be applicable to the first invasion in 701 BC, since at that time the city was delivered by Hezekiah's payment to Sennacherib of all the treasures of the king's house, including the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord. Sennacherib's first invasion in 701 BC begins in 2 Kings 18:13 and ends in 2 Kings 18:16, just 4 verses. At that time, Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple to pay Sennacherib's ransom, and Sennacherib went away. Between verses 16 and 17, there is a break in the story, until some years later, toward the close of Hezekiah's reign, as Mrs. White was shown, when the second invasion took place. But unless we read these verses carefully and compare it with Isaiah 36 and 37 and 2 Chronicles 32, we miss that break in the story. Notice, verse 16. At that time did Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord, and gave it to the king of Assyria. Verse 17. And the king of Assyria sent Tartan. So in verse 16, there is a break. He gives the gold to the king of Assyria in verse 16, and in verse 17, it says, and the king of Assyria sent Tartan and Rapsaris and Rapshakeh from Lachish to King Hezekiah with a great host against Jerusalem. So, from verses 13 to 16, the first invasion takes place. The ransom is paid in verse 16. And then the king of Assyria leaves, and in verse 17, and the Lord did it this way so we would not figure it out until now. I have no doubt about that, because better people than me have tried to figure this out, and when you read all the history, it is incredible how many people are confused, okay? Thank God we've got Mrs. White. Then there's a break, and then in verse 17, notice that it says, the king of Assyria came with a great host against Jerusalem, 185,000 soldiers, which were all killed by one angel in one night. And when they were come up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool. Verse 18. And when they had called out to the king, to King Hezekiah, there came out to them Eliakim, which was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the recorder. Verse 19. And Rabshakeh, the messenger of King Sennacherib, said unto them, Speak ye now to Hezekiah. Thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria. Verse 20. Now on whom dost thou trust, that thou rebellest against me? Now therefore I pray thee, give pledges to my lord the king of Assyria. Give me more money. Verse 25. The Lord said to me, Go up against this land and destroy it. Then said Eliakim, King Hezekiah's messenger, and Shebna and Joah unto Rabshakeh, Speak, I pray thee, to thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it. And talk not with us in the Jews' language in the ears of the people that are on the wall. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language. 2 Kings 18, 16 to 28. The second invasion begins with 2 Kings 18, 17. Is described in extreme detail over the next 57 verses in chapters 18 and 19, and concludes with the decimation of Sennacherib's entire army of 185 Assyrians in one night by one angel of the Lord in 2 Kings 19:35. Sennacherib invasion number 2. And Hezekiah received the letter of the hand of the messengers and read it. And Hezekiah went up into the house of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. So now he takes the letter and spreads it before the Lord and prays. Maybe he didn't have enough money and he said, Lord, what do I do now? I've given him the gold from your temple. What else can I give him? Or his faith had increased. If the invasion took place in 695 BC, 6 years have passed from 701. If the invasion took place in 688 BC, 13 years have passed. So a lot could have happened here. But he takes the letter and prays to the Lord. Then Isaiah sent to Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, That which thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib king of Assyria, I have heard. And this shall be a sign unto thee. Ye shall eat this year such things as grow of themselves, as a sabbatical year, and in the second year, a jubilee year, that which springeth of the same, And in the third year sow ye and reap, and plant vineyards, and eat the fruits thereof. Therefore thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city, for I will defend this city. And it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. 2 Kings 19, 14, 20, 29, and 33 to 35. Friends, this is why the Bible says we have to read the Bible as if we're looking for buried treasure. This is not easy. Remember, I've been studying this for more than 30 years. It's taken this is why it's taken me so long to put together this series. Also because I translated into Spanish, but this is hard stuff. You cannot just listen to this video unless you want to take my word for it. But this is why I'm going slow. The sign given by the Lord to Hezekiah is sabbatical and jubilee language, taken directly from Leviticus 25. Hezekiah reigned 29 years, 2 Kings 18:2. Since 701 was his 14th year, then we can be sure that his reign commenced in 715 BC and he died in 686 BC. So there's no discrepancy of when he started reigning, and there is no discrepancy of when he died, 686 BC. This is very important, you're going to see. Between 701 BC, the 14th year of Hezekiah's reign, and 686 BC, the year of his death, there are only two sabbaticals during which Sennacherib's second invasion could have taken place, and those would be 695 BC and 688 BC. We will now look closely at both of these years to decide on what year invasion number 2 took place. Now, look at this timeline from creation to the year 2022. This is a timeline done on a program called Excel. It's a mathematical program, and we are going to go very slowly on this table. Notice that this is an 861 row table done on Excel. Since I cannot show you all 861 rows, I need to explain how it works. I will go slow so I do not lose you, but I promise when we finish it, you will be dumbfounded and understand why it has been so hard for all historians to decipher the two invasions of Sennacherib. When we populate this chart, we will see something fascinating. Look across the top at the columns labeled A through Y. Look on the left margin at the rows labeled 1 through 861. Now look at cell J, like jungle, number 2, with a gray 0. J meaning column, 2 meaning row. That is year 0 when Adam was born, and it does not count. The following 49 cells labeled 1 through 49 is a Jubilee year cycle with year 50 in green. Now look at the dark line separating row 5 from row 7. I have chosen to hide that line, and I have done that 12 times in this chart so I can show you the beginning and the ending of the chart because it's 861 lines. Look at cell J, as in jungle 5, numbered 21. That is year 21 of this Jubilee cycle. Now look at cell J7. That is year 35. If I had not hidden line 6, cell J6 would be numbered 28, since when we add 7 years to year 21, we get 28. And when we add another 7 years, we get year 35. Now look at cell A10 with a 1 in it. Next to it you see a 50 in column B, and in cell D as in David 10, you see a green 50. That is Jubilee 1, 50 years from the creation of Adam, and highlighted in green. So any numbers you see in green are Jubilee years. And if you look under column A, it will tell you what Jubilee year it refers to. And if you look at column B, as in boy, it will tell you how many years is that particular year, Jubilee year from creation. And that is the number you will see in cell D as in David 10. So you can see that throughout the whole table and follow it. So if you look at Jubilee 2 in column A, you see that I hid 6 rows to show you Jubilee 2 at 99 years from creation. And if you look at cell B as in boy 239, you see that it is labeled year 1653, which is the same number in cell D as in David 239. So the number you see in column B as in boy will always be the same number as the number you see in column D as in David. Something very important happened in the year 1656 in cell G as in George 239, as we will see. Now look at cell J as in jungle 505. And it is labeled year 3521 from creation and highlighted in blue. There are 8 cells highlighted in blue, and these are the 8 major biblical events that have taken place at the end of sabbatical or midst of the week years, all of which form the backbone of the Seventh-day Adventist message. And therefore, all are found in the great controversy as we saw in part 11. If any of these numbers move one cell, none of the rest would line up. Only our Lord, the great mathematician, could have put this together. When we move backwards on this table, as we will see, year 3521 will equal 457 BC, when the 2300-day and 70-week prophecies commenced, which you see under the column description. Now look at cell D as in David 571, and it is year 3977. When we move backwards on this table, as we will see, year 3978 equals year 0 when Adam was born. So counting forward, after 3977 would normally come to year 0, which does not count. And we jump from BC to AD, so AD 1 is year 1 in cell E 571. When we look at our next table in a few minutes, you will see that cell D as in David 571 equals the year -1 or 1 BC. Now go to cell B as in boy 859. And it is year 5993 from creation, which equals our year 2016. Counting to the right 6 years, notice that our year 2022 equals year 5999 from creation. Let me repeat that. Now go to cell B as in boy, 859, and notice that it is year 5993 years from creation, which equals our year 2016. So you count every other cell, and counting to the right 6 years, notice that our year 2022 equals year 5,999 from creation. Meaning that on the Day of Atonement of 2022, at the end of the sabbatical year, year 5,999 was coming to a close, and year 6,000, the 1,000-year Jubilee, was commencing also on the same Day of Atonement. The 1,000-year Jubilee would end on the Day of Atonement of the year 2023. Finally, go to cell B as in boy 860, and it is year 6,000 from creation, which equals our year 2023. Counting to the right 6 years, notice that our year 2029 equals year 6006 from creation. And there you see in the description that year 2022 is year 5,999 from creation, and year 2029 is year 6006 from creation. Notice the orange, year 3,977 from creation, followed by AD 1, year 0 does not count, 3,977 1 BC, 3,978 AD 1. Look at year 3,521, 2,300 day and 70-week prophecies commence. We're going to see that when we go backwards now. At the end of the sabbatical year in 457 BC, year 3,521 from creation, great controversy, 410. Sennacherib invasion number 2. Hezekiah. A test came in 701 BC when Sennacherib, who had followed Sargon II in 705 BC on the throne of Assyria, carried out a successful campaign against Palestine in general and against Hezekiah in particular. Of this invasion, both biblical and cuneiform records are available. The biblical records, and there are the references, combine 2 invasions of Sennacherib in such a way that it is difficult to know where the account of the campaign of 701 BC ends and that of the later one, which took place after 690 BC, begins. When Hezekiah died, 686 BC, his son Manasseh became the sole ruler. Seventh-day Adventist Bible Dictionary, pages 485 and 486. I was concerned when I read this because these people in the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary were very sharp that put this together. And they are saying that the second campaign had to take place after 690 BC. You're going to see why. And I said, well, but I'm figuring 695 BC is when the second campaign took place, which would have been 5 years earlier. In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And the prophet Isaiah said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Then he prayed unto the Lord, and it came to pass afore Isaiah was going out into the middle of the court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Tell Hezekiah, I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city. 2 Kings 20:1-6. Unless read very carefully, 2 Kings 20 is very confusing to decipher. It comes after both invasions in 2 Kings 18 and 2 Kings 18:17. As Sennacherib was preparing to invade Jerusalem in 701 BC, Hezekiah fell very ill, worried that the city would fall, and prayed. The Lord added 15 years to his life, and he died in 686 BC. So Sennacherib comes in 701 BC. Obviously, it was more than Hezekiah could handle. He became deathly ill. And he cut off the golds of the temple, of the doors, and he gave him talents of silver and all the gold that he had, and Sennacherib went away for either 6 years or 13 years. And after all of that happened, the Lord said, I will heal you, I will give you 15 years more to live, and don't worry about this city. He's not coming into this city. I will defend this city. That took place in 701 BC. He reigned 29 years. So if that took place in the 14th year of Sennacherib, of Hezekiah, that means that in 701 BC you had 15 years, and it takes you to the 29 years that he lived. So that's why he died in 686 BC. The 15 years were added in 701 BC because invasion number 1 took place in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, 2 Kings 18:13, which started to reign in 715 BC, and he only reigned 29 years. But when we went to that other table that we saw, I realized that 688 BC could not be the date of the second invasion, because when you count mathematically from the day of creation of Adam to the year 2022, that's the end of 6,000 years. And if you follow the 688 BC line, it takes you to the year 6006. So I said, this is wrong, this cannot happen. That was my mentality when I did this in 2017. Look at that chart. If you take 695 BC, it ends in 2022. If you take 688 BC, it ends in 2029. You see there, year 2022 is year 5999 from creation. Year 2029 is year 6006 from creation. So even though the Bible commentary had said it has to be after 690, I could not agree with that, because 690 takes you to year 6006. And that's how I left it. And I chose 695 BC. Okay, let's continue. This gets very, very interesting. Sennacherib invasion number 2. Then Isaiah sent to Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, that which thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib king of Assyria I have heard, and this shall be a sign unto thee. Ye shall eat this year such things as grow of themselves, and in the second year that which springeth of the same. We've read this before. Second year is a jubilee year, first year is a sabbatical year. This sign was given to Hezekiah during a sabbatical year. God's people were not to eat that year, nor the year that followed, which was the Jubilee year. But 701 BC was not a sabbatical year, and therefore fails the test required in 2 Kings 19:29. So there had to be a second invasion by Sennacherib in 695 BC or 688 BC. So notice in this table that 701 was not a sabbatical year. The sabbatical year would have been 702. And therefore that first invasion could not have been the only invasion, because it had to take place on a sabbatical year followed by a jubilee year. Also notice that 688 BC was not followed by a jubilee year. 688 BC was followed by 687 BC, which was not a jubilee year. 695 was a sabbatical year, and it was followed by 694, which was a jubilee year. So at this point, I was totally convinced. The 688 BC line had two problems. It ended in the year 6006 from creation, and 688 BC was not followed by a jubilee year. There's a 7-year period difference there. So I knew for sure 2022 was the end of the 6,000 years from creation. Now look at this statement from Ellen White. The reign of Hezekiah was characterized by a series of remarkable providences which revealed to the surrounding nations that the God of Israel was with his people. The success of the Assyrians in capturing Samaria and in scattering the shattered remnant of the 10 tribes among the nations during the earlier portion of his reign was leading many to question the power of the God of the Hebrews. Imagine, he gives all the gold of the God of the Hebrews to the king of Assyria. What kind of God do you have? A few years after the fall of Samaria, the victorious armies, Sennacherib's armies, reappeared in Palestine, this time directing their forces against the fenced cities of Judah. With some measure of success, he got paid the talents of silver, Hezekiah paid him his money, but they withdrew for a season because of difficulties arising in other portions of the realm. Not until some years later, toward the close of Hezekiah's reign, was it to be demonstrated before the nations of the world whether the gods of the heathen were finally to prevail. Prophets and Kings 3:39. So Hezekiah died in 686 BC, towards the close of his reign. And I said, wow, 686 BC he died. 688 is closer to the close of his reign than 695. But 688 is not followed by a Jubilee year. 688 takes us to the year 6006. Well, she's saying towards the end of Hezekiah's reign. Yeah, 695 was towards the end of Hezekiah's reign. He reigned 29 years. It's still towards the end of Hezekiah's reign. And you see there, but they withdrew for a season. That is the break between 2 Kings 18:16 and 17. And you see the victorious armies reappeared in 701 BC. And this is where I was, friends, in 2017 when I did this study. The math was perfect. But Lord, what happened? Nothing happened in 2022. Tirhakah enters during invasion number 2 after 2 Kings 18:17. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah, and Isaiah said, Be not afraid of the words which thou hast heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor, and shall return to his own land. So Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Assyria warring against Libnah, for he had heard that he had departed from Lachish. So when Rabshakeh gets paid the 30 talents of gold, he returns and he sees that the king of Assyria is in a mess. And they don't come back for a number of years. And when he heard say of Tirhakah, king of Ethiopia, Behold, he is come out to fight against thee, he sent messengers again unto Hezekiah, saying, Let not thy God in whom thou trustest deceive thee, saying, Jerusalem shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. 2 Kings 19:5-10. Sennacherib had reason to fear the Ethiopians. Look at this quote. And there came out against them Sirah the Ethiopian with a host of 1,000,000, 1,000,000 troops, and 300 chariots, and came unto Marishah. Then Asa went out against him, and they set the battle in array. 2 Chronicles 14:9-10. The biblical story combined two different campaigns which took place at different dates. The first campaign, which took place in 701 BC, ended with the submission of Hezekiah, as in the Assyrian source and 2 Kings 18:13-16. While the second campaign was waged after 689 a period on which there is no information in the Assyrian sources. It's in Encyclopedia Judaica, volume 9, page 89. Of course, there's no record of the second campaign because he was decimated. His whole army was destroyed. But now these people are saying the same thing that the Bible commentary from the Seventh-day Adventist Bible commentary said. The second invasion had to take place after 689 BC. Tirhaka, the fifth king of the 25th or Ethiopian dynasty of Egypt. In 690 BC, he became king after his brother's death. So if he becomes king after his brother's death in 690 BC, how could I be saying that the invasion took place in 695 BC when Tirhaka wasn't even king then? Very confusing for me at that time. I didn't know what to do with this. And reigned until 664 BC. In 2 Kings 19:19 and Isaiah 37:9, King Tirhaka is mentioned in connection with an invasion of Judah by Sennacherib. These verses speak of his approach with an army to fight against Sennacherib. Many formerly believed that this was at the time of Sennacherib's campaign of 701 BC, of which the Assyrian king has left us long and detailed records. However, Tirhaka was certainly not king in 701 BC and may not even have been in Egypt at that time. Therefore, it seems that the campaign which proved so disastrous to Sennacherib in 2 Kings 19:35 must have taken place after Tirhaka began his reign, and therefore sometime after 690 BC, but before the death of Hezekiah, which appears to have occurred about 686 BC. I was totally confused. Lord, now this puts a real monkey wrench in this situation. What do I do, Lord? I had to go with the weight of evidence. I realized that this makes sense, but who knows how accurate the Tirhaka was in the records. Encyclopedia Judaica also does not understand the sabbatical years. They did not understand what I understood based on the Jewish economy. And when I weighed the evidence, I figured, no, I am going to go with 695 BC in 2017 because it's followed by a Jubilee year, 694 BC. It ends on the 6,000 years, and the other one ends on the 6,006 year. That was my reasoning in 2017. Thinking that 2022, the world was going to fall apart. But now that we're here and I'm saying, wow, what a coincidence that we only have a difference of one sabbatical, 7 years. If you move one sabbatical, everything falls perfectly. We're going to see. You're going to see that only God could have figured this out, could have devised this, friends. Look at the top call out. Tirhaka enters in 690 BC, fits better the words of Mrs. White toward the close of Hezekiah's reign in 686 BC, Prophets and Kings 339. So you see there, 690, you see where 686 is, much closer to the end than 695. God had to complicate this matter to confuse the devil and to keep people from guessing and figuring this out many years ago. So this is why none of these people that have studied Sennacherib and Hezekiah, nowhere do you see a mention of the sabbatical year. Nowhere do you see a mention of it had to take place on the sabbatical because it was followed by a jubilee. Nobody picked that up. It went over everybody's head. And I decided to go with 695 BC then. When nothing happened in 2022, I was compelled to go back and check my math. And my math was perfect, but I found a small typographical error. And on August 30th, 2022, I sent out an email to everybody on my mailing list. I did not put it on YouTube. It wasn't a video. I sent out an email. And I explained that although my math was perfect, I had titled the last slide in my presentation, Part 1, 6,000 Years Ending the Year 22. I had titled it 6,000 Years End in the Year 2022. When in fact, I should have titled it 6,000 years, or year 6,000 begins in year 2022 and ends in year 2023. We're going to look at that chart again so you can see what I'm referring to. This is the last row in that presentation, which you can find in YouTube, and you see the last orange line. You see on the left year 5,999 from creation, which is year 2022, and I wrote year 6,000, Jubilee 122 plus 3 sabbaticals. The Jubilee of Jubilees commences at the end of the sabbatical year in 2022. You remember that in the other chart, year 6,000 started at the end of the sabbatical year in year 5,099, and it went to the end of the 6,000 years in year 2023. You know, friends, when I did this study and I found those 8 dates, I was just shocked that nobody in the Adventist church had picked that up. But of course you can't if you don't believe in sabbatical years. They've never studied the sabbatical year because they believe the feasts were nailed to the cross, and the Sabbath was nailed to the cross, and the Jubilee was nailed to the cross. Nobody lets their land rest. But you can see that this is all a mathematical exercise. It cannot be wrong. You don't need the Bible. You don't need the spirit of prophecy. You plug it into a mathematical program, and you start in year 1, and you end up in year 6,000. You go back, and you end up in 3,978 BC for year 1 of creation. It cannot be wrong. It's perfect. Okay? We're going to see that. If you were to give any mathematician in the world some parameters and say, look, Adam was born in year 1, we don't know when, start counting forward and count 6,000 years, and not counting year 0, and then count back, knowing that 701 BC was when Sennacherib invaded Hezekiah for the first time, and Hezekiah started his reign in 715 BC, they would land 15 to 20 years like I did from 3263. They would have the same problem I had, the inclusive reckoning of years, but they would land in exactly the same place. It's a mathematical calculation. Friends, this is what I want you to understand. There are only 2 sabbaticals during which that second invasion could have taken place. We know the first invasion took place in 701 BC. The next sabbatical is 695 BC. The next sabbatical to that is 688 BC. Hezekiah dies in 686 BC. There is no more time. It didn't happen in 695 BC, which ends in 2022. It has to end in the next sabbatical 2029. But how come we can't solve the riddle? This is going to blow you away. Is the only mathematical conclusion to this problem. You decide what you want to do with it. I am going to share it with you. Look at this quote. Christ in the wilderness of temptation stood in Adam's place to bear the test he failed to endure. Here Christ overcame in the sinner's behalf 4,000 years after Adam turned his back upon the light of his home. Selected Messages, Book 1, page 267. There are some who use this statement to prove that AD 27, when Christ started his ministry, was exactly 4,000 years from creation. Therefore, the 6,000 years will end in the year AD 2027. In this statement, like all of her other 6,000 year statements, Mrs. White is providing an approximate time, not a definite time, for the end of the 6,000 years. AD 27 was a sabbatical year. That is correct. But it will not line up with any of the other 8 sabbatical years in the Great Controversy except for AD 27. In other words, none of the other years that we have come up with in the Great Controversy, none of those 8 years would line up. Because those 8 years line up with 2022 or 2029, which were sabbatical years. 2027 falls in the middle. It cannot line up. 2027, this is not happening in 2027. It cannot. We have to be delivered, as we have studied, at the end of a sabbatical year. However, what is interesting from this statement is, notice what it says. 4,000 years after Adam turned his back upon the light of his home. So, in this statement, Ellen White, under inspiration, is counting the 6,000 years from when Adam turned his back, not when he was born, but from when Adam turned his back and sinned. Once man walked with God in Eden. With open face he beheld the glory of the Lord and talked with God, and Christ and angels in paradise, without a dimming veil between. Man fell from his moral rectitude and innocency and was driven from the garden. And amid the general gloom and moral wretchedness, man has wandered from the gates of paradise for nearly 6,000 years. Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, page 7. For 6,000 years, the great controversy has been in progress. Well, the great controversy is Adam and Satan. It could have started when creation, because at creation Adam had not sinned. For 6,000 years, the great controversy has been in progress. The Son of God and his heavenly messengers have been in conflict with the power of the evil one to warn, enlighten, and save the children of men. Now, as the 6,000 years are beginning, all have made their decisions. This is true. We are delivered by the voice of God on a sabbatical year. By the time Christ comes to fight with Satan, everybody has made their decisions. Now, all have made their decisions. The wicked have fully united with Satan in his warfare against God. The time has come for God to vindicate the authority of his downtrodden law. Now the controversy is not alone with Satan, but with men. We're talking about Leviticus 16, towards those verses at the end, when Jesus is coming riding on a white horse, and he destroys the wicked. Now the controversy is not alone with Satan, but with men. The Lord hath a controversy with the nations. He will give them that are wicked to the sword. Jeremiah 25:31. The mark of deliverance has been set upon those that sigh and that cry, for all the abominations that be done. Now the angel of death goes forth, represented in Ezekiel's vision. Great Controversy 656. So in this statement, Mrs. White is also counting the 6,000 years from sin and not from creation. Thus, under a new disguise, the great rebel still carries on his warfare against God, begun in heaven and for nearly 6,000 years continued upon the earth. Mrs. White again is counting from sin and not from creation. So there is no doubt that the end of the 6,000 years is to be counted from sin and not from creation. Although in order to arrive at the year 3263 for the start of the reign of Hezekiah, we must use the years from creation, since that is all we have been provided for in Genesis. So in order to get to 3263, we have to count from creation. But the 6,000 years have to count from sin. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died, Genesis 5:5. So we don't know when he sinned, but we know when he was born and when he died. So we have to count from creation to arrive at 701 BC, when Hezekiah was invaded by Sennacherib, and at 715 BC, when Hezekiah started his reign. So when did he sin? Let's continue. Too much importance cannot be placed on the early training of children. Friends, I don't know how the Lord guided me here. I remembered, wow, I've read that statement somewhere, and I looked in all my notes, and there it was. Too much importance cannot be placed on the early training of children. The lessons that the child learns during the first 7 years of its life have more to do with the formation of character than all that it learns in future years. The Signs of the Times, April 18th, 1903. Adam and Eve were not endowed with a fallen nature like ours, but they were babies in spiritual understanding when they were created, and their character had to be formed before they could be tested. But how do we know when Adam and Eve sinned? Let's look at another table. Notice that the title of this table is From Sin to 2029. Look at cell J as in John 471. There is only a 7-year gap between 695 BC and 688 BC. Look at cell J as in John 859. There is only a 7-year gap between 2022 and 2029. Now let's look at the only mathematical solution to this riddle from the great mathematician. By moving the entire table one sabbatical cycle down 7 years, look at row 3 in orange, 688 BC in cell J as in John 472 is now followed by a Jubilee year in 687 BC in cell D as in David 473. Look at cell A as in Apple 11 for Jubilee 1. It now starts in year 57 from creation, but year 50 from sin. In this table you can see both years, from creation first and from sin right next to it. All of the dates calculated from Scripture, like the flood, the Exodus, the sabbatical years, will take place on the same year, but 7 years later, since we skipped the first 7 years while Adam and Eve were still in the garden. Look at cell D as in David 469. Hezekiah started to reign in year 3263 from creation, like the other table, and year 3256 from sin. But the year is still 715 BC. Look at cell J as in John 505. 457 BC still falls on a sabbatical year. But look at cell B as in boy 505. It takes place 3,515 years from creation, like our other table, but 3,508 years from sin in cell C as in cat, 505. This one I have to do slowly. Remember that when counting, you use the year from creation. So in the case of 457 BC, cell B as in boy 505 tells you it is 3,550 years from creation, so that 3,515 years is the same year as 463 BC in cell D as in David 505. So if D as in David 505 equals 463 BC, and it is 3,515 years from creation, cell E as in Edward 505 equals year 3,516 from creation, or 462 BC, and if you keep on counting, 457 BC is year 3,521 from creation, as is noted in the description column. Look at cell J as in John 860. In 2029, at the end of the sabbatical year on the Day of Atonement, the 6,000 years from sin will start and end on the Day of Atonement in year 2030. Now go to the description column and let's start at the top. Year 0, Adam is born. It does not count. Is year 3,978 BC. Sabbatical and Jubilee years start counting from year 8, 3,970 BC. All of the numbers shown in this column are from creation, not from sin. Next line. Sabbatical year starts and ends on the Day of Atonement, 3,923 to 3,922. Jubilee year, 3,922 to 3,921, as you see it in green. The flood, year 1656 from creation, 2,322 BC, you see it in gray. And if you count to the right, you will notice that D, as in David, 239 is year 2325. That would be year 1653 from creation. And you count over 3 years, and 2322 is 1656, like we had in our original chart. Exodus from Egypt, sabbatical year, year 2513 from creation, 1465 BC. Hezekiah starts to reign in 715 BC, year 3263 from creation. Sennacherib's invasion number 1 in 701 BC, year 3277 from creation. Sennacherib's invasion number 2 at the end of the sabbatical year in 688 BC, year 3290 from creation. Sabbatical year 689 to 688. Jubilee year 688 to 687 fits perfectly now. 2300 day and 70 week prophecies, 457 BC, great controversy, 410. Year 3977 from creation is a Jubilee year, followed by AD 1. Year 0 does not count. Christ is baptized at the end of the sabbatical year in AD 27, year 4004 from creation. Daniel 9:24 to 27, great controversy, 327. Christ is crucified in AD 31, midst of the week, year 4008. Probation closes for Jewish nation at the end of the sabbatical year in AD 34, year 4011, great controversy, 327. You see the 1260-year papal supremacy, when it begins and when it ends. You see Josiah Litch. You see the judgment of the dead. You see the last jubilee since creation took place in 2008. 2015, you see that Pope Francis addresses the U.S. Congress for the first time in history and presents his Laudato Si encyclical letter. 2022, what happened in 2022, friends? This is my opinion. I am quite convinced of it. You need to pray, and you need to search, and you need to work out the study, and you need to realize that we are out of time. Vaccine controversy at the SDA General Conference in St. Louis, Missouri, June 6 to 11, 2022. Jesus leaves the most holy place in Leviticus 16:18 on the Day of Atonement of that year, October 6. Judgment of the living commences. That is my opinion. If you don't think we're in the judgment of the living, when you're seeing the controversies that are taking place in this church, the division in this church, the apostasy in this church, that we have not been able to discern one ray of light since Ellen White died, different from what she believed when she was alive. When she says a number of times you're going to find things that you've never even dreamt of in Scripture. Friends, we are totally asleep. This is why we are called the Laodicean church. Okay? So that is what I believe. In 2022, when the 6,000 years from creation ended, Jesus left the most holy place. He is giving 3.5 years to his church before probation closes now, and 3.5 years to the world between 2026 and 2029. That's my conclusion. We are out of time. 686 BC, Hezekiah died. There's no more time, friends. If we were in 2022, we could make an argument, well, it could go to 2029. It cannot go to 2036. First, if you think that we could go to 2036, 10 years from now, the way things are, with Iran about to be destroyed and that 2,500-year prophecy about to be fulfilled, maybe when that happens, you're going to believe that this is correct. But friends, remember, when that happens, probation closes as soon as the National Sunday Law is enacted in America. You need to spend some time, and you need to pray, and you need to fast, and you need to say, Lord, is this a figment of my imagination, or is this the truth? Because I think I've given you information that is irrefutable. You pray about it. 2029, the Jubilee of Jubilees, year 6000 commences on the Day of Atonement. At the end of the sabbatical year in 2029, Jubilee 122 plus 3 sabbaticals. And the Jubilee of Jubilees, year 6000, ends on the Day of Atonement at the end of the sabbatical year in AD 2030. Jubilee 122 plus 3 sabbaticals plus 1 year. If the judgment of the living commenced in 2022, how old would that person be in 2029? Only 7 years old, not accountable. So with this time frame, 7 years, it's what is necessary. I believe Adam and Eve sinned after the first sabbatical, when their character was fully developed and they could make a rational decision. The only conclusion to that riddle, only the great mathematician could have put it together. Take the time and go through that. You may have to look at this video a couple of times, but you'll find it that I've spent hours and hours and hours. Friend, I have been doing this for almost a year. Researching all of this. This is why it takes time. The year 2022, the year of my redeemed, year 6,000 from creation begins. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. Isaiah 63:4. Wait here, I am going to my Father to receive the kingdom. Keep your garments spotless, and in a little while I will return from the wedding and receive you to myself. Jesus leaves the most holy place in fulfillment of Leviticus 16:18. Vaccine controversy at the Seventh-day Adventist General Conference in St. Louis, Missouri on June 6 to 11, 2022. Judgment of the living commences. 3.5 years for God's people and 3.5 years for the 11th hour workers. The year 29, the year of recompenses. Why is 2022, in my opinion, called the year of my redeemed? Because that's when his kingdom is given to him. That's when the wedding takes place. That's when God the Father says, these are all yours. And now, we got to go through the trial period. But he knows that all those that are in that list, he knows that they're going to make it through after they are tested and tried. The year 2029, the year of recompenses, year 6,000 from sin, and 1,000-year jubilee begins. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance. That's when he comes riding on his horse with the garments of vengeance. And the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion, Isaiah 34:8. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. Revelation 22:12. The seven thunders, part 13. Questions 7. The 3.5 moeds of persecution, Daniel 12:7. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years, Habakkuk 3:2. For the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened, Matthew 24:22. Thou must prophesy again, Revelation 10:11.